Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we help folks find high-value hi-fi, home theater, and headphone products. And today we're talking about the Aiyima. I don't know if I'm saying that right. A08. It's an amplifier with a built-in DAC and Bluetooth. So, sit down, grab a cup of coffee. By the way, Yoda, you can fit 13 ounces into his empty skull. Grab a cup of coffee, sit down, and let's talk about the Aiyima A08. Today's sponsor is Sith Audio PVC Pipe Cutter. That's right, when you want to cut pipe the audiophile way, there's only one choice, and that's Sith Audio PVC Pipe Cutter. Cuts pipes up to 1.5 inches in diameter. Outside diameter, not inside diameter. Sith Audio audiophile PVC cutters. Okay, the Aiyima A08. It's $115 right now on Amazon. There's 15 or 14 of them left. $115. If you watch the channel at all, you may know about me talking about the Aiyima A07. To me, that's probably the best affordable amplifier one can get for less than $100. For $115, you're getting the same amplifier as far as chips, op-amp chips, but you're also getting a DAC, you're also getting Bluetooth, and you're getting an internal power supply versus an external power supply. I said power supply brick, like a laptop brick that you plug into the wall. So it's all internal in here. It's got an IEC connector on the back. Pretty simple. On the front, power, volume, and if the volume scrapes like that, just pull it out like a millimeter, then it won't scrape anymore. On the back, full-size USB, Bluetooth, RCA inputs, speaker outputs, a switch. Top is for USB, bottom is for RCA. Power supply, then there's a fuse under the hood here. One of the things I like about the A07 is you can change the op amps. You can do the same thing here. If you unscrew these 4 screws, pull out the volume control knob, and then there's another little nut inside that goes on the sleeve of the volume control. Take that off, pull it out, and you can see the op amps inside. You have to take the back plate off too so you can slide the board in and out around. But if one is so inclined, they can op amp roll, which just means changing the op amp. I do have a few op amps here, so I may try that. But good news is, out of the box, this thing already sounds awesome. So there's some crazy power specs associated with this amp. Some of those specs are at 10% total harmonic distortion, which you're not going to want to listen to at that level. Anyway, we're going to go with the 1% total harmonic distortion. 260 watts into 4, 150 watts into 8. And that's plenty of power. I had this hooked up to these, the Sony SSCS5s, but they're not just the Sonys because they're supercharged. I souped them up a little bit with the help of one of my patrons, Neil. Neil redesigned a crossover. So I ordered the crossover parts, put it together, and put it in there, and they sound real nice. Kind of like putting 7 pounds of fertilizer into a 5-pound bag, though, because the big inductors were quite big. They're in there, and they make a pretty significant difference. This crossover was completely redesigned, so it wasn't just taking Sony's crossover and replacing it with better parts. Completely redesigned on the crossover. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about it, except that it's pretty cool. But by doing so, lowered the impedance. So this actually became a harder to drive speaker. Good news is, Aiyima A08 had no problems. This is going to be a fairly short review because everything that I had to say about the A07, which is really my de facto recommendation for an amplifier that's less than $100, everything I have to say about that goes to this except more. A08 actually sounds cleaner. It has a bit more separation, a little bit larger soundstage, a little bit more placement in space of instruments. Tonality, it sounds identical to the A07, which makes sense. Same amplifier chip, same op amp chips, same everything. It just has a USB DAC and Bluetooth, which is pretty cool. There's no subwoofer out. There's no remote control. There are no tone controls. This is simply an amplifier that has Bluetooth, a USB DAC, and volume control. That's it. You also get one RCA. The reason I like this Class D amplifier so much is because it doesn't sound like a Class D amplifier. And I know that's painting with broad strokes. In my experience, though, most Class D amplifiers have some similar sound characteristics. Oftentimes, they can seem a little bit harsh on the top end, maybe a little bit thin, chalky, treble. I'm stealing that from Ron, my buddy over at New Record Day. Chalky, sterile, dry. This doesn't sound dry. It sounds robust. It sounds like a Class AB amplifier. And it sounds like a good Class AB amplifier. Never once was I thinking, I wish I had tone controls. And even on the really top end SMSL, I just did an SA400 review, and I still was reaching for the tone controls. I was still using their baked-in EQs. The Aiyima A07 and the A08 are the only affordable, I'm not going to say cheap, they're the only affordable Class D amplifiers that I've had that I haven't wanted to change the tone controls. And it's good because this one doesn't have any. To me and to my ear, it just seems balanced. Completely balanced. I don't feel like it needs more bass. I don't feel like it needs more treble. It just sounds good. Really good. Shockingly good. Amazingly, shockingly awesome at $115. From a sound perspective, tone and how accurate it sounds, I don't think one is going to get significantly better than this until they hop up to maybe the $300 Emotiva A2 Mini. I think that one does sound better. But I don't think it necessarily sounds better. I just think it presents the music better. Maybe a larger scale. But this is no slouch at all. I just came off of listening to these souped up Sonys. Yeah, that's kind of a souped up Sonys. I just came off of listening to the souped up Sonys through my Akitika GT102 power amp with the PT102 preamp, which to me is one of the best combinations that I have for electronics. When I switched it over to the A08, I did notice a difference, but it didn't necessarily have to do. It was less clean, a little bit more smearing between instruments, a little bit flatter soundstage. But again, this is no slouch. That combination is over $1,000. This is $115. If you're not in a desktop situation and you want to change the volume, you're going to have to get up and walk over and change it, or get a DAC that has a variable output and a remote control. The way this is designed, its shape and size, perfect for a soundbar replacement. The footprint is tiny. It's perfect. It's the size of a brick. Really, a little bit bigger, but yeah, about the size of a brick. It's got some vent holes on top, which it doesn't really need because it doesn't really get that hot. There's not much to say about this. It's shockingly good. I even switched out the DAC, so I went with the SMSL SU9N, which is a very good DAC at $400, to see if I noticed any difference between the internal DAC and the SMSL. Yes, I did notice a difference. Also came down to instrument separation. The SU9N had a lot more detail going on the top end, but again, this was no slouch. It wasn't a huge significant jump. If one has a decent set of speakers, and the good news about this amp is this is going to go with any speaker, so you can hook up Klipsch, you can hook up Wharfdales to this. You can hook up any speaker you want because this is neutral enough. On a lot of Class D amplifiers, I would recommend a neutral to even warm speaker because the amplifier has a tendency to be a bit harsh, thin even. I'm utterly blown away and amazed. This is the absolute best sounding amplifier one can get. Or let me preface that by saying this is the absolute best sounding amplifier that I've heard under $150. Full stop. I don't like to use that term, full stop, but it is. If you got $115 and you need a USB DAC, you want Bluetooth, this is it. You don't need to look any further. I do have a topping that I haven't listened to yet, but for my money and my ears, this is just so darn good. It sounds rich. There's enough detail in there. Not warm. It's just a good neutral sounding amplifier. That's it. I really don't have anything else to say about it. It's an easy recommendation. It's the only recommendation that I really have. There's some other stuff like the DO3 from Aiyima. But this sounds better. I wish the D03 had this amplifier chip, which is the TPA, I think 3255. Same one in the A07 and the A08. I wish they would take that combination and put it into a D03, because then you have a subwoofer out, you have a remote control, you have tone controls if you want it. You have a whole bunch of other options than you do with this one. This is just an amplifier. This thing sounds so good, I would go out and look for a DAC that has a remote control if you want to use this in the main system or as a soundbar replacement. And if you do, you just set the volume, I don't know, 60, 70%, and then just control volume off the DAC. Not a lot to say. 115 bucks. If you get the Sonys when they're on sale, even the Sonys in stock form. Granted, these sound way better than the Sonys in stock form, but the Sonys in stock form still sound pretty awesome. You take a $90 speaker and a $115 DAC amplifier, add some cables for $210, hook it right up to your computer. I think one's going to have to spend quite a bit more to get an appreciable difference. I was shocked how small of a difference there was between my Aiyima and this. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is as good as the Aiyima. It's not. But from a sound perspective, it is unbeatable at this point for me. Big step up from the Fozzy Audio BT20A. Better separation. Tonally, it's very similar, but this has better control of the bass. It's just incredible. Now, if one's a tinkerer, they're still going to want to look at the A07 because you can change the power supplies. The power supply is the power supply. It sounded good though. It sounded better than the stock power supply that came with the A07. If one researches, maybe gets a Meanwhale power supply or something, a nice switching power supply for the A07, probably may sound better than this, but this thing, for what you're getting, is pretty amazing. So I was editing this and I forgot to mention that the Bluetooth, to hook up the Bluetooth, you just turn it on and then the Bluetooth shows up to pair. Once you pair it though, to the Aiyima, not the bird, once you pair it, you have to go into your Bluetooth settings and hit disconnect. Otherwise, you're stuck with Bluetooth and the USB function stops. So to get the Bluetooth to let go, you gotta actually unpair it from your phone. I don't really have anything else to say. It's an easy recommendation. No subwoofer, no remote, no tone controls. Just an amp and a DAC. But it's a good sounding one. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night, we have Patreon-only Zooms. You can also sign up for Amazon Music. There's a link in the description. Click on the link. You get a few months for free. I get a couple of dollars. You can also buy the Aiyima A08 through my affiliate links. I'll link it to Amazon. There's 14 left. If you're thinking about getting it, you might as well pull the trigger because it's $115. It's actually $150 on Ayima's website. So, don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen, maybe through your new Aiyima A08, and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.